Hello everybody! Welcome to the show where my makeup is distractingly different every single time that I do this. I asked my daddy, hey, what sort of look should I do for doing the filming? And at first he said, Wild West. And then he was like, I don't know, like 1890s. That's when the Wild West was. And I went, I have no clue how I would even go about doing Wild West style makeup. So he goes, okay, 1980s instead. And I went, yes, that I can do. Just shoot myself in the face with a color gun and put on a turtleneck. Fortunately, I already had the turtleneck and also this jumper. So I didn't need to go to any special trouble and I'm quite proud of myself. But another thing I've noticed is I don't like 80s makeup very much at all. I feel like a clown, which is fitting because the other suggestion my daddy made was Juggalo. If you want to see me do Juggalo makeup, I don't know, I guess let me know. But otherwise, you're here for a story. We're up to Littleland Part 2, Chapter 10. If you are new, maybe go back and watch the first Littleland. Don't jump in now in Part 2, Chapter 10. But if you're not new here, then you'll already know the drill. So what I want you to do is get as cozy as you possibly can. Get a blanket. I had to pull mine off the bed. That was a mistake. I'm gonna put my blanket back over there. Get a blanket, get a cuddly toy, and let's have a story, okay? Okay. By the time the caregivers returned, Vanessa's anxiety had all but been forgotten. Mia quirked a smile to note that her charge sat contentedly in the corner, giggling at something or other. The girl's eyes, however, still lit up upon Mia's return. Mia noted with a full heart that even Frank seemed to join in on the merriment. She gestured to Gilbert on her right, who smiled softly at the scene before them. The little ones were gathered and shepherded through to the dining area and placed into high chairs around a large, tall table. The air was thick with a savoury scent that made Vanessa salivate. As it did, Danny's stomach gave an audible growl, prompting titters of laughter from the little ones. Food was served, bibs were tied on, and forks scraped the plates enthusiastically. Gradually, the scraping slowed and stopped altogether. Piper was loath to finish her meal. She knew perfectly well what awaited her after dinner, and she wasn't particularly enthusiastic about it. She knew she needed some discipline, but that didn't help loosen the knot that had formed in her stomach. Piper had resolved to be on her best behaviour on this, her third visit to the park. Ethan had a dreadful way of furrowing his brow when Piper misbehaved, and her goal had been to avoid this expression entirely. By her count, Piper had earned the look upwards of 23 times on this visit alone. This alone to Piper was cause for celebration. The celebration was spoiled somewhat by a churning feeling in her stomach, a feeling which only seemed to grow as the hours went by. Piper knew what this feeling was, and she knew what needed to be done to be rid of it. Still, something in her protested at that prospect, and she grew angry. She finished her last mouthful and looked up from her plate. Ethan, finely tuned to monitor her movements at all times, caught her eye and gave her a look that plainly stated, "All right, little miss. It's time." No, she wasn't ready. Her stomach continued to churn and boil. Piper felt on the verge of a crossroads. Her behaviour now would cement the course of the evening. Ethan raised a brow, and Piper made her decision in a split second. She just wasn't in the mood to submit to Ethan peacefully. Piper groaned audibly, drawing the attention of her peers. Even Mickey, clearing dishes, paused at the noise. "What's wrong?" asked Vanessa. Piper jerked her chin in Ethan's direction, a surly expression creasing her freckled features. Ethan's eyebrow twitched. He hadn't expected Piper to show much cheek, if any. Ethan had spanked Piper enough times to accurately predict her behaviour, or so he thought. Ethan cleared his throat. "Now then," he said, rising from his chair in a decisive fluid motion. "We've got some grubby little ones to deal with," he said, crossing the room and tussling Aiden's hair. He grinned upward at Ethan's touch, his face sticky with sauce. "And then we've got some naughty little ones to deal with," said Ethan, his gaze settling meaningfully on the doctor, who nodded sagely as he rose. Frank sank lower into his high chair in a desperate attempt to avoid his caregiver's attention. Piper merely grit her teeth as Ethan unbuckled and lifted her from her high chair, an action which surprised him further. He began to suspect that that evening's spanking would be something of an ordeal. Piper's jaw still set. She didn't relax into his embrace as she would ordinarily. She folded her arms across her chest and allowed herself to be carried silently up to the bathroom. Judging by his girl's body language, Ethan was correct. Piper didn't flinch when she was set down on the cold tiles in the bathroom, and when Ethan began to remove her clothes. Both Vanessa and Frank, however, did. "Wait," whispered Vanessa, dodging Miss Mia's reaching hands. Dr. Gilbert's hands were similarly blocked by Frank, who clapped his hands over the buttons on his shirt. Now, said Miss Mia, cupping Vanessa's shaking hands between her own. "The cabin is a lot smaller than the big house, sweetheart." But why does that mean I have to?" Frank trailed off, still attempting to squirm away from the doctor's large hands. "There is only one bathroom, little man," said Dr. Gilbert, in a low, calming tone. "So please stand still. You cannot take a bath in your clothes." "But I don't want to be..." Overcome with shame, Vanessa couldn't finish the word. Miss Mia knelt down and opened her arms to the little girl, who folded herself into them, whimpering softly. "Nobody's looking, honey. I promise. Look." Hesitantly, Vanessa did as she was bid. Danny's eyes were locked squarely upon the floor. Piper, her jaw still clenched, squeezed her eyes closed. Aiden had his hands clapped over his eyes, giggling. "Aiden, why are you laughing, man?" asked Danny, his eyes not moving from their firmly averted trajectory. "I don't know," he laughed. "This is weird. I don't want to see anyone's butt." Vanessa chuckled softly. Miss Mia kissed her brow before returning to the task at hand. Vanessa, sufficiently cowed, remained still as she was undressed. "See, baby," said Miss Mia softly. "Everyone's embarrassed." Vanessa was soon placed into the waiting tub. The warm water calmed her, and she was delighted to note that the high-walled bathtub was filled with bubbles, which covered her nudity entirely. The bathroom was wide and airy, with blue-tiled walls and floors to match. In the center of the room were 6 bathtubs, 5 of which held little ones in varying degrees of humiliation. Aiden smiled his goofy grin in Vanessa's direction, not appearing the least bit embarrassed. Danny was still employing the same tactic, with his eyes locked on the surface of the water. Warm steam rose from the tubs and fogged the windows that lined the wall. Through the steam, Vanessa could just make out a soft flurry of snowflakes that fell outside. Despite her shame, Vanessa realized that she felt calm, at ease, safe. It was a confusing feeling, but nice all the same. Vanessa turned back to focus on her own current situation just as Miss Mia dabbed a large, warm sponge across her back. The warmth of the bath water was divine, and Vanessa closed her eyes, allowing herself to be maneuvered at will. Soon she was clean and being lifted from the tub. A soft whine escaped from her mouth as she was wrapped and cradled in a fluffy towel. "I know, we love the bath." Miss Mia gave Vanessa's backside a series of gentle pats. "But we also love a lot of other things." Miss Mia trailed off, hoping to pique her small charge's interest. It worked, and Vanessa looked upward, her eyes sparkling. "What are we gonna do?" Miss Mia chuckled and tapped Vanessa's nose with a single delicately manicured fingernail. "You'll have to wait and see."